Welcome, the Lord's chosen. When a community survives on one person's clarity, their silence becomes a global outage. Before we dive in, understand this. Every generation has at least one practitioner who isn't just talented. They are the axis around which everyone else secretly rotates, not because they asked for the role, but because the universe quietly appointed them, while everyone else was busy trying to look important. And if that person ever unalives, the whole community wouldn't just lose a voice. It would lose its alignment, identity, and spiritual Wi-Fi signal in one catastrophic blink. Sounds dramatic? It is. But here's the part people don't talk about. Studies on group behavior show that communities naturally form around a single stabilizing force, one person who unconsciously regulates decisions, moods, and direction. Take that person away, and the group doesn't simply wobble. It collapses inward like a star losing its gravity. That's exactly who this practitioner is. Not the loudest, not the flashiest, not the one chasing applause. They're the one whose influence is so rooted, so quietly powerful, that people don't realize how much they rely on them until the entire ecosystem starts glitching. They don't lead with speeches, they lead by existing. Their presence is the invisible infrastructure that keeps everything sane, strategic, and spiritually insured. And yes, the funny part is, half the people benefiting from them don't even like them. They will argue, roll eyes, gossip, and still subconsciously wait for this person's reactions, like employees waiting for the manager to enter the room. It's the kind of irony life loves, depending on someone you swear you don't need. But here's the truth that lands like a punchline with no laugh behind it. If this one practitioner falls, an entire community doesn't just lose power. It loses direction, covering, emotional equilibrium, and the last residue of accountability it had left. So buckle in, because once you see who this practitioner really is, and why the entire community is hanging on their existence, you'll understand why their absence isn't a gap, it's an extinction event. Number one, they're the only one who knows where the real doors are, not just the keys. Most people in a community know how to follow routines, copy what others do, or repeat whatever they've been told. But this practitioner is different. They're not moving through life trying to fit in or follow the script that everyone else accepts as normal. They see how the entire structure works, the hidden entrances, the blind spots, the loopholes, the traps, and the opportunities disguised as problems. While everyone else argues over who holds the keys to influence, this person is working with an understanding far deeper than access. They know the architecture itself. This is why people depend on them without even realizing it. They're the one who can walk into a chaotic situation and immediately understand what needs to shift, who's out of alignment, and what's blocking progress. Others wait for doors to open. This practitioner builds their own. And because of that, the community leans on them for direction in ways no one openly acknowledges. Their mind isn't cluttered with popularity contests or social politics. They're focused on what actually moves things forward. They don't waste time fighting over spaces that were never meant for them. They simply identify the openings no one else notices and step through them confidently. That skill isn't luck, and it isn't ego. It's clarity mixed with lived experience, a combination most people never develop because they're too distracted trying to look right instead of being right. When someone like this disappears, the community doesn't just lose a leader. It loses the person who understands how everything is connected. The group starts fumbling, second-guessing, and slipping into unnecessary battles because suddenly no one knows where the real path is. They're left staring at locked doors, arguing over who has the strongest personality, while the one person who actually understood the entire layout is no longer there to guide them. This practitioner isn't valuable because they're special. They're valuable because they understand what the rest don't even think to question. Their absence doesn't create inconvenience. It creates confusion. They weren't holding the keys. They were holding the map. Number 2, they don't just hold wisdom. They stabilize chaos by existing. Some people walk into a room and instantly calm the atmosphere without saying a word. This practitioner is that kind of presence, but on a level most people never recognize until they're gone. Their influence isn't loud or dramatic. It's the steadying effect they have on situations, conversations, conflicts, and even people's internal storms. Their existence alone keeps everything from tipping over. What makes them unique is that they don't need to force control. They don't bark orders or try to dominate anyone. They just move through life with a grounded awareness, and that naturally organizes the chaos around them. People behave better, think clearer, and make wiser decisions when they're around this person. Not because they're scared, but because they feel anchored. It's like this practitioner carries a quiet order within themselves, and everyone else unconsciously aligns to it. This is why communities underestimate their value. They assume the peace they feel comes from things working out, or people being mature, not realizing there's a human stabilizer at the center of it all. Remove that stabilizer and the same people who thought they didn't need them suddenly don't know how to handle conflicts, responsibilities, or emotional waves. They start reacting instead of responding. Tiny issues turn into major problems. Old drama resurfaces. People who once seemed balanced start acting like they're lost at sea. This practitioner doesn't go around calling themselves a protector or a peacemaker, but they're exactly that. Their internal clarity becomes the community's emotional thermostat. Their ability to stay centered keeps others from spiraling. They're the one person who doesn't feed into panic, exaggeration, or gossip, so their presence alone stops negativity from spreading like a virus. When they're no longer there, that invisible shield disappears. Suddenly the group feels heavier, more chaotic, more unpredictable. The calm they brought wasn't a coincidence. It was their energy regulating the environment. This is the truth people never understand until it's too late. The one who makes peace look effortless is the one doing the most work, and their existence is the reason chaos never wins. Number 3, their discernment protects people who don't even like them. There are people who can sense danger, read intentions, and understand motives before anyone else even notices. This practitioner is one of them, and that ability doesn't come from being flashy or intimidating. It comes from an inner clarity that most people never develop. They can look at situations, relationships, or decisions and immediately see the hidden consequences. They know who can be trusted, who is pretending, and which paths lead to disaster. Because of that, they act as an invisible shield for everyone around them, even for the ones who secretly roll their eyes at them or speak badly behind their back. The remarkable thing is that their protection isn't intentional in a selfish way. They aren't trying to earn favor or control outcomes. They simply see things as they are, and the community benefits from that clarity. People often lean on their judgment without realizing it. They follow their lead, adopt their advice, or unconsciously adjust their actions based on the practitioner's insight. Even those who resist them or dismiss their words still end up being safeguarded by their awareness. When this practitioner is gone, the gap becomes immediately visible. The same people who once ignored their warnings suddenly find themselves exposed to risks they didn't even notice before. Conflicts escalate, manipulation spreads, mistakes multiply. The community loses its early warning system, the person who filtered the dangers before they landed. What makes this even more extraordinary is how subtle it is. Most people never see the protective role the practitioner plays because it's quiet, invisible work. There are no dramatic interventions, no public applause, no certificates of service. Yet without it, the cracks that were once held together by their insight quickly widen. The reality is harsh but true. Their discernment isn't just a skill, it's a lifeline. It shields, directs, and contains chaos for everyone around them, even those who are ungrateful or hostile. When they disappear, the community doesn't just lose guidance, it loses an invisible guardian whose absence can turn stability into vulnerability overnight. Number 4, they are the boundary between influence and infection. Every community has energy flowing through it. Opinions, emotions, insecurities, egos, hidden agendas, beliefs, and all the subtle influences people exchange without even realizing it. Most people absorb these things blindly. They take in ideas because they sound good. They take in emotions because they're contagious. They take in behaviors because everyone else is doing it. And without someone filtering all of that, the group becomes vulnerable to anything that feels loud, dramatic, or persuasive. This practitioner is the one who stands in that invisible gap. They have the rare ability to sense the difference between influence that uplifts and influence that corrupts. They can tell when a person's intention is genuine or when it's coated in manipulation. They can feel when an idea is empowering or when it's disguised poison meant to control, weaken, or divide. Other people hear words. This person reads the energy underneath them. That awareness becomes the community's immune system, quietly blocking what shouldn't be allowed to spread. Because of this, they often step in before others even realize something is wrong. They redirect conversations, challenge false narratives, expose hidden motives, and interrupt harmful patterns. They do it without making a big show out of it. Their presence alone makes negativity lose its grip because they don't feed into it. They don't allow harmful ideologies to take root. They don't let people with toxic motives shape the atmosphere. When this person is gone, the difference is instant. The community starts absorbing anything that sounds convincing or feels emotionally charged. Drama spreads faster. Misunderstandings multiply. Outsiders with questionable motives gain influence. People who once seemed stable suddenly shift, becoming reactive or easily swayed. Without this practitioner filtering the environment, the group becomes spiritually and emotionally unprotected. The truth is simple but sharp. They were the barrier keeping the wrong things from becoming normal. They weren't fighting people. They were fighting contamination. And when the one person who can sense the difference between influence and infection disappears, the entire community becomes vulnerable to everything they were once shielded from. Number 5, they're the person. Everyone secretly studies, but publicly underestimates. There's always that one person in a group who seems to move differently, speak differently, and react differently, and nobody admits it, but everyone is watching. This practitioner is exactly that person. On the surface, people dismiss them. They shrug at their ideas, mock their habits, or act like they're irrelevant. But deep down, the community is constantly measuring itself against them. Their choices, reactions, and even silence set standards that others unconsciously follow. People copy what works, adopt strategies they see paying off, and mirror behaviors that give results, but they rarely acknowledge the source. This practitioner doesn't seek approval or admiration, yet their influence spreads like a quiet undercurrent. They aren't the loudest voice, the flashiest presence, or the one chasing recognition. Instead, they're consistent, grounded, and self-contained, and that consistency becomes a hidden compass for everyone else. People study their approach to life without ever admitting it out loud, because secretly they know this is the person who actually knows what they're doing. Take them away, and the effects are immediate. The unspoken reference point vanishes, and suddenly everyone is moving without clarity. Decisions that once had a subtle guide now feel random. Habits that once had an anchor begin to drift. The culture that relied on their example devolves into chaos, confusion, and empty competition. People start imitating each other aimlessly because the one person whose example mattered most is no longer there to set the tone. The irony is brutal. The ones who publicly minimize them are the same ones who privately mimic and depend on them. They underestimated the practitioner while secretly aligning themselves with their energy and wisdom. Their absence doesn't just leave a gap in leadership. It removes the invisible reference system that kept the group grounded, focused, and moving in the right direction. In the end, the practitioner's power isn't in being loud or commanding attention. It's in being the quiet standard everyone studies and follows without realizing it. Remove that person, and the community loses its compass entirely. Number 6, they're the only one who tells the truth without a hidden agenda. Most people talk with strings attached. Every word has a purpose. Sometimes it's to gain favor. Sometimes it's to protect an image. Sometimes it's to manipulate a situation to their advantage. Conversations become a subtle battlefield where motives hide behind smiles and politeness. But this practitioner is different. When they speak, the words come without filters for personal gain. They aren't shaping opinions to serve their ego or pushing narratives to make themselves look right. They speak only to clarify, correct, or restore balance. Their truth isn't performative, it's functional. It exists to keep things real, not to satisfy someone's ambition or pride. Because of this, they are indispensable. They act as a grounding force in a world full of double meanings and hidden agendas. People may not always like what they hear, and some may even resent it. But deep down, everyone knows that when this practitioner speaks, they are hearing reality, not distortion. That rare honesty becomes the thread holding the community together. It prevents misunderstandings from escalating, stops gossip from turning into crises, and keeps manipulation from taking root in the first place. When this person is removed, the difference is immediate and stark. Without someone who speaks truth, without personal interest, the environment becomes a playground for manipulation. Hidden agendas surface unchecked. Opinions are weaponized. Trust erodes because no one can distinguish sincerity from strategy. The subtle structure that once guided fairness, balance, and accountability collapses, and people begin acting from fear, pride, or ignorance instead of clarity. This practitioner's role is quiet but absolute. They are the moral compass and the filter, ensuring that influence doesn't become infection and that intentions don't become exploitation. Their absence doesn't just remove a voice, it removes the lens through which the community could see itself clearly. In a space full of hidden motives, their truth is the only unpolluted force keeping chaos at bay. Without them, the community is left unguarded, and manipulation becomes the default. Number 7, they're the emotional lightning rod. They absorb what would destroy everyone else. In every community, emotions flow like an invisible current. Stress, fear, anger, jealousy, and frustration move from person to person, often unnoticed until they erupt. Most people are not equipped to handle the weight of these emotional storms, and left unchecked, they spiral into conflict, resentment, and division. This practitioner, however, operates differently. They have the rare capacity to absorb, contain, and neutralize what would overwhelm everyone else. People unconsciously, and sometimes consciously, dump their emotional baggage onto them because they know, even without realizing it, that this person can handle it. It's not a voluntary role or a burden they advertise. They simply carry the weight with a quiet resilience. Their stability allows the community to function without imploding under the pressure of raw emotions. Tensions that might have turned into fights dissolve in their presence. Fear that could have spread like wildfire is contained. Anxiety, doubt, and even resentment are softened before they reach critical mass. The practitioner becomes a buffer, a human shock absorber, and the community operates smoother because of it. When this practitioner is gone, the difference is immediate and unavoidable. The emotional currents that were once safely absorbed now bounce around unchecked. Minor disagreements explode into major conflicts. Hidden resentments surface. People lash out at one another because the safety valve that once contained the storm is gone. Suddenly, the community feels chaotic, unpredictable, and heavier than it has in years. The very storms the practitioner carried alone now crash against everyone indiscriminately, and no one has the capacity to hold them back. Their presence is silent but essential. They do not seek recognition for this work, yet it is the glue holding the emotional ecosystem together. Without them, the raw human darkness that everyone carries begins to circulate freely, unfiltered and unmanageable. The community doesn't just lose a person. They lose a stabilizing force that prevented emotional destruction and kept everyone afloat. Their absence leaves the group exposed to the very chaos they once contained. Number 8, their evolution forces everyone else to level up. Some people talk about growth, share advice, and post motivational words, but this practitioner doesn't need to do any of that. They embody evolution in every action, every decision, and every moment of their life. Their standards, discipline, and focus are living proof of what is possible, and it creates an unavoidable ripple effect. People can't help but notice, compare, and adjust themselves because this practitioner operates on a frequency that most cannot ignore. Their growth is not performative. It's relentless, natural, and unapologetic, and it challenges everyone around them without a single lecture. Being around them is uncomfortable for those who are stagnant or complacent. It's subtle but undeniable. Habits that once felt sufficient start to feel limiting. Weak excuses become obvious. Comfort zones shrink under the quiet pressure of their example. The practitioner doesn't ask people to evolve. They simply exist in a way that leaves everyone else with a choice: rise or remain behind. And because they are consistent and unwavering in their journey, the pressure is constant. You don't even realize how much you're measuring yourself against them until their absence reveals how much you were leaning on that energy to push yourself forward. When they leave, the community's momentum stalls. Without the living example of evolution, stagnation sneaks in. People stop stretching themselves. Mediocrity becomes acceptable again. Habits once challenged by the practitioner's presence quietly settle back into old patterns. Conversations, ambitions, and decisions lose the edge that forced refinement. The culture softens because the person who set the pace, raised the bar, and held everyone accountable through their very existence is no longer there to enforce it by example. Their growth is contagious, and that is their power. They don't need to demand change. They inspire it just by living it. When they disappear, the subtle yet unrelenting pressure that kept the community advancing disappears too, leaving behind an environment where comfort replaces ambition and evolution gives way to inertia. Number 9, they are the codebreaker. Not because they're smart, but because they're built from what others ran from. Some people navigate life by following rules, copying patterns, or settling for what's easy. This practitioner doesn't operate that way. They see beneath the surface of everything: systems, relationships, power dynamics, and even human behavior itself. They understand the codes that govern outcomes, not because they read a book or learned a theory, but because they lived through what others refused to face. They stared into chaos, walked through challenges most would avoid, and survived situations that would have broken anyone else. That lived experience gives them insight that no amount of schooling, advice, or conventional wisdom can provide. People often mistake their ability for brilliance or intuition, but it's deeper than that. The practitioner decodes patterns because they've been forced to. They've seen the truth behind appearances repeatedly, and that hard-earned clarity becomes a map for everyone around them. Others unconsciously rely on their understanding to make decisions, solve problems, and navigate unseen pitfalls. The community's progress, cohesion, and direction often hinge on this quiet decoding work that no one else could accomplish. When they're removed, the effect is immediate. Without someone who can see the structures beneath the surface, the community defaults to shallow thinking. People stop noticing hidden risks, repeating cycles, or opportunities they could have leveraged. Misunderstandings multiply, conflicts re-emerge, and the group drifts back into the comfortable illusions it was once challenged to see past. The lessons the practitioner lived and embodied vanish with them, leaving a void where depth once guided action. Their power isn't flashy or public. It isn't about being the smartest in the room. It's about surviving, understanding, and translating complexity into clarity for others. Remove the practitioner, and the community loses more than guidance. It loses the very framework that keeps it from being shallow, reactionary, and trapped in surface-level thinking. The one who broke the code was holding the door to depth, and without them, the door closes, leaving everyone stuck outside. Number 10, they carry the unspoken history of the group. Every community has a memory, but most of it is buried, ignored, or distorted. This practitioner holds that memory in a way no one else does. They remember the betrayals that were never forgiven, the cycles that were broken only once, the lessons learned through hardship, and the spiritual debts that linger beneath the surface. Their recollection isn't just about facts or stories. It's about understanding how everything connects, why people act the way they do, and what patterns are likely to repeat if left unchecked. They are the living archive, the silent historian, and the keeper of truth that nobody else can fully grasp. Because of this, the community often unconsciously relies on them. Decisions are filtered through their presence, behaviors are moderated by their insight, and progress is guided by the memory they carry. People may overlook it, or even resent the weight they seem to hold, but without this practitioner, the lessons of the past would be invisible. Mistakes that were once corrected resurface, conflicts that were avoided re-emerge, and ignorance spreads, not because anyone wants it to, but because no one else remembers. When they are gone, the effect is subtle at first, but devastating. The same dynamics that once caused harm return, often stronger and more chaotic than before. Old betrayals resurface because no one is there to remind the group of the consequences. Cycles of dysfunction repeat because the wisdom of experience has vanished. Spiritual and emotional debts that were once acknowledged and managed begin to accumulate unchecked, leaving the community vulnerable and exposed. Their role isn't flashy or celebrated. They don't seek recognition for remembering what others forget. Yet the stability and growth of the entire group often depend on them carrying this invisible load. Without them, the community loses its historical compass. The lessons etched into the fabric of its existence vanish, and the group drifts toward repeating the very mistakes it once survived, unaware of the pattern that has returned. Number 11. They're the only one who can stand alone without becoming dangerous. Most people are deeply influenced by their surroundings. Take them out of familiar structures, support systems, or communities, and they start to unravel. Emotions spike, morals blur, and decisions that once seemed clear become distorted. Isolation exposes weaknesses, insecurities, and unhealed wounds, and for many, it can lead to destructive behavior, either toward themselves or others. This practitioner, however, is built differently. They can stand alone without losing clarity, composure, or integrity. In fact, solitude sharpens them. They grow stronger, more disciplined, and more self-aware when removed from the crowd. Their independence isn't about pride or arrogance. It's about internal alignment. They carry a personal compass that doesn't rely on validation, fear, or peer approval. They can navigate life's storms without collapsing or lashing out. This is why the community unconsciously depends on their presence. They are the one anchor capable of maintaining stability, even when the group is fractured. Others may think they're just confident or calm, but beneath that exterior is a rare resilience that allows them to operate effectively where most would falter. When this practitioner disappears, the difference is glaring. Suddenly, no one remains capable of functioning at the same level of integrity and composure on their own. The group loses its stabilizer, the person who could navigate crises without bending or breaking. Without them, isolation becomes a test that everyone fails. People overreact, make poor choices, and allow fear or selfish impulses to dictate their actions. Chaos, moral compromise, and collapse begin to ripple through the community because no one else has the internal structure to withstand it. Their ability to stand alone is not just remarkable, it is essential. It's the reason they've been trusted, followed, or tolerated despite challenges. They are the silent protector of balance, a living proof that independence doesn't have to equal danger. Remove them, and the equilibrium they maintained effortlessly disappears, leaving everyone else exposed, reactive, and vulnerable to the pressures of life. Number 12. They maintain the standards. Everyone pretends we're self-chosen. Most people like to believe their discipline, their principles, and their successes are entirely their own. They tell themselves stories about hard work, self-control, and moral strength, convinced it's all earned in isolation. The truth is, very few people operate without a reference point, someone who quietly raises the bar, sets the tone, and models what excellence actually looks like. This practitioner is that reference point. Their presence defines what is possible, not through lectures or demands, but simply by living in alignment with high standards every day. People follow the example unconsciously, adjusting their behavior, ambition, and ethics to match a bar they rarely admit exists. They do not enforce rules or insist on obedience, yet the group operates within a framework shaped by them. Deadlines are met, boundaries are respected, and accountability exists even without anyone policing it. Their consistency and integrity are contagious, and it subtly molds the community's culture. People may complain, resist, or even resent it at times, but without realizing it, they measure themselves against this practitioner's standard and rise to meet it, or fail trying. When this practitioner is gone, the effect is immediate. The invisible pressure that kept everyone striving vanishes. Habits that once seemed disciplined slip. Decisions once made with integrity become careless. The culture softens, not because people suddenly lack capability, but because the benchmark they unconsciously depended on no longer exists. What everyone pretended was self-chosen unravels instantly. Standards drop, laziness creeps in, and what was once considered non-negotiable becomes negotiable. Their power isn't in giving orders or criticizing shortcomings. It's in embodying excellence and holding the line by default. Remove them, and the community loses the structure that maintained accountability, ambition, and ethical consistency. The bar falls, and everyone is left scrambling, realizing too late that what they thought was their own effort was in fact shaped, elevated, and guarded by someone who quietly refused to compromise. Number 13, they keep the community connected to its higher purpose, not its petty politics. In any group, it's easy for energy to get hijacked by ego, drama, and endless power struggles. People compete for attention, status, or imagined authority, and soon the original vision, the higher purpose that brought everyone together, gets lost in the noise. This practitioner is the anchor that keeps the community aligned with what actually matters. They don't chase recognition or applause, and they aren't concerned with who looks more important or who gets the credit. Their focus is singular, maintaining the integrity of the collective mission and ensuring everyone remains tethered to the bigger picture. Their presence is subtle but profound. When discussions start to veer toward gossip, resentment, or petty rivalries, they redirect attention back to the essential goals, often without even speaking. Their actions and standards create a gravitational pull toward purpose, and the group unconsciously follows that alignment. People may resist, underestimate, or ignore them at first, but over time the practitioner's commitment to the higher mission sets the rhythm, tone, and priorities for everyone else. When this person is removed, the consequences are immediate. Without someone constantly recalibrating the group toward its true purpose, ego and personal agendas take over. Petty conflicts suddenly dominate conversations. Status games replace collaboration. Energy that was once productive and focused on meaningful outcomes gets wasted on trivial power plays. What was once a community with vision slowly turns into a collection of people chasing attention and proving themselves, completely forgetting why they came together in the first place. The practitioner's power doesn't come from control, persuasion, or authority. It comes from alignment. They exist as the living reminder of what the group is meant to accomplish, keeping distractions, toxicity, and misaligned priorities at bay. Remove them, and the mission loses its anchor. The community drifts, ego battles rise, and the higher purpose that once unified everyone becomes a distant, almost forgotten concept. Their absence exposes how dependent the group really was on someone who never sought to be the center, but was always the backbone. Number 14. They are the last line of spiritual, psychological, and energetic accountability. In every community, there are unspoken rules, guidelines for behavior, ethics, and energy that keep the group from descending into chaos. Most people follow them inconsistently, or only when convenient. This practitioner, however, is the living embodiment of accountability. They hold the space where truth, integrity, and alignment intersect, and their presence alone ensures that everyone operates at a level they might not maintain otherwise. People act differently around them, not because of fear, but because respect for their clarity, insight, and standards naturally guides behavior. Conversations stay honest, intentions stay pure, and energy remains contained, all because this practitioner quietly enforces the invisible boundaries that no one else can. They do not announce themselves as the authority, nor do they demand recognition. Their influence is subtle but absolute. Emotional outbursts are tempered, deception falters, and spiritual shortcuts are exposed simply because they are present. They become the mirror reflecting reality, and the group is compelled to respond with alignment rather than avoidance. Their accountability spans the spiritual, psychological, and energetic dimensions of the community, making them the ultimate stabilizer. When this practitioner is gone, the difference is immediate and destabilizing. Without their presence, the group loses its invisible regulator. People revert to unguarded habits, hidden motives go unchecked, and toxic energy spreads unchecked. Misalignment, manipulation, and dysfunction, previously restrained, gain momentum. The ecosystem that depended on their balance begins to fracture because there is no one left who can hold the same multidimensional space of integrity. Their power is not about control, it is about preservation. They are the last line of defense, the invisible structure that keeps the community from collapsing under its own impulses. Remove them, and the carefully maintained equilibrium vanishes. The group becomes unregulated, unhinged, and unprotected, revealing just how reliant it was on the practitioner's presence to maintain the invisible architecture of spiritual, psychological, and energetic stability. Conclusion: what becomes unmistakably clear after understanding the role of this practitioner is that they are far more than just a member of a community. They are its unseen backbone, its quiet compass, its stabilizing force, and the invisible architect of its integrity. Every point we've explored reveals a truth that most people never acknowledge. Their presence is the difference between chaos and order, stagnation and growth, superficiality and depth. They hold the knowledge, the insight, the emotional resilience, and the spiritual authority that keeps everyone else aligned, accountable, and protected, often without anyone fully realizing it. They are the codebreaker who sees the systems beneath the surface, the historian who remembers the cycles that must never repeat, and the living standard everyone unconsciously measures themselves against. They absorb the emotional storms that would shatter the rest, maintain the moral and energetic boundaries that prevent corruption, and enforce alignment to a higher purpose without ever seeking recognition. Their evolution forces others to rise. Their discernment shields the community from hidden dangers, and their very existence establishes the culture, structure, and ethical compass that everyone else leans on. When this practitioner disappears, the absence is not just noticed, it is felt in every decision, every interaction, and every moment of unguarded energy. The systems they maintained begin to fail, the emotional currents they absorbed start to ripple unchecked, and the moral and spiritual clarity they embodied evaporates. Without them, the community loses more than guidance or protection. It loses its framework for survival, its invisible reference point, and the anchor that keeps it moving toward growth and purpose. Their impact is subtle yet seismic, quiet yet undeniable, and their absence exposes just how fragile the ecosystem truly is, without the one person who has been holding it all together. This is why recognizing, respecting, and valuing such a practitioner is not optional. It is essential. Their presence transforms a group from ordinary to extraordinary, and their legacy is felt in every moment they influence, stabilize, and elevate. If this video opened your eyes, gave you clarity, or made you see the unseen forces that shape communities, make sure to show your support. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, comment your thoughts, and share it with someone who needs to understand the power of the unseen pillars in their own life. Don't let this message stay hidden. Spread it, absorb it, and let it transform the way you see influence, leadership, and the quiet power that shapes everything around us. Stay blessed.